Hello and welcome. In this video, we will learn the various types of data models. After watching this video, you should be able to describe the various types of data models. When building a database for any organization, it is very important to know the requirements first so that it helps the developers or database administrators to plan the structure of a database. The first phase is to decide the tables, the columns, the relationship between the tables, and how they are structured in the physical memory. This helps the developers and database administrators to understand the relationship between the various objects in the database. Also, it helps in highlighting any drawbacks in the plan and correct it at the design stage itself. Now let us see what data model is. A data model depicts the logical structure of a database, including the relationships and the constraints that determine how data can be stored, managed, and processed within a database. Data models are categorized into three types: object-based data model, record-based data model, and physical data model. Now, let us look at each data model in detail. Object-based data model is designed using the entities in the real world, attributes of each entity, and their relationship. Object-based data models are further categorized into two types: entity relationship data model and object-oriented data model. Before looking at the definition of entity relationship data model, let's understand it by taking an example. Consider we have to design a database for a college, and the real-world entities that are involved with the college are students, lecturers, courses, subjects, classes, and others. Once all the entities are listed, we need to find out the relationship between them and try to map each other. Also, we have to list the attributes that relates to each entity. Like for entity student, the attributes would be student ID, first name, last name, date of birth, address, and others. Similarly, other entities have their own set of attributes. Therefore, we can define entity relationship model as a way of graphically representing the logical relationships of entities in order to create a database. At this stage, we are not bothered about what data value is stored in the database and the size of each data. A simple entity relationship diagram for the college database is shown on screen. In this diagram, entities or real-world objects are represented using a rectangular box, and their attributes are represented using ovals. The key attribute of the entities is underlined inside an oval. Also, all the entities are mapped using diamonds, which represents the relationship between other entities present in the database. This is one of the methods of representing the entity relationship data model. We saw that entity relationship data model treats the real-world objects as entities. Whereas an object-oriented data model, it considers each object in the real world as objects and isolates it from each other. It groups its related functionalities together and allows inheriting its functionality to other related subgroups. Let us consider an employee database to understand the object-oriented data model. When we are creating a person class, it will have name, address, age, and phone as its attributes. And we shall take sp underscore get address and sp underscore get phone method to get a person's address and phone number. Here, the values for these attributes at any instance of time are objects. For example, John, Troy, 25, 2453545, sp underscore get address of John, sp underscore get phone of John forms a person object. Similarly, Matthew, Frasertown, 28, 5645677, SP underscore get address of Matthew, SP underscore get phone of Matthew forms another person object. Now, we will create another class called employee, which will inherit all the functionalities of the person class. In addition, it will have the attributes employee ID, employee type, and department ID. To retrieve their department details, use the method sp underscore get department details. Different objects of employee class are engineer, accountant, manager, and clerk. Here, we can observe that the features of person class is available only if another class is inherited from it. This feature of object-oriented data model is called encapsulation, as it binds the features in one class and hides it from other classes. Now, let us look into the physical data model. It represents how the model will be built in the database. This model shows all table structures, including column name, column data type, column constraints, primary key, foreign key, and relationships between tables. The diagram on screen shows how the physical data model is designed by making use of unified modeling language diagram along with the table and its columns. In this example, the primary keys are represented at the top, and the relationship between the tables is represented by interconnected arrows from table to table. Also, if you look at the student table and subject table, they are related to the class table. Therefore, class table is the parent table for both of the tables. Another type of data model is record-based data model. These data models are based on application and user levels of data. They are modeled considering the logical structure of the objects in the database. Record-based data model defines the actual relationship between the data in the entities. Record-based data models are further categorized into three types: hierarchical data models, network data models, and relational data models. Now, let us look at each one of them. In hierarchical data model, the data is organized like a tree structure. It simply represents the data using parent and child relationship. Hierarchical data model is an old style of organizing or storing data, and still some organizations use it. It follows one-to-many relationships, which means all parents can have more than one child, but each child should have only one parent. The example for hierarchical data model is shown on screen, where project manager is the parent and team lead 1 and team lead 2 are the children. Then, team lead 1 has two children, team member 1 and team member 2. Similarly, team lead 2 has two children, team member 3 and team member 4. The drawback of hierarchical data model is that when we want to add a new field or record, it may require to redefine the entire database. In order to overcome the drawbacks of hierarchical data model, the network data model was introduced. In the network data model, entities are organized in a graph in which some entities can be accessed through several paths. The main difference between hierarchical data model and network data model is that in hierarchical data model, we can have only one parent to a child, but in network data model, we can have more than one parent to a child. Now, let us look into an example for a network data model. Here, ABC College has two children, that is Department A and College Library. And this represents the one-to-many relationships. Even though there is no relation between Department A and College Library, a student can be a member of both Department A and a College Library. And this represents many-to-one relationship. Therefore, the student has two parents. This is known as the network data model. Relational data model is completely different from hierarchical data model and network data model. It defines how the data is structured in the database physically and how they are interrelated. Let us take an example to understand the relational data model. Consider the department and employee table shown on screen. In the employee table, we have a unique employee ID column which identifies each employee. Such column is called as the primary key of the table. Similarly, department table has department ID as primary key. In the employee table, instead of storing all the information about the department, we have a column of department ID from the department table. By using the department ID from the department table, we have established the relationship between employee and department tables. This model is least bothered about the physical storage of structure and data in the memory. It considers only the data and how it can be represented in the form of rows and columns, and the way it can establish the relation between other tables. Now let us do a quick recap of this video. A data model depicts the logical structure of a database. A data model is categorized into object-based data model, record-based data model, and physical data model. Object-based data model is designed using the entities in the real world, attributes of each entity, and their relationship. Object-based data models are further categorized into two: entity relationship data model and object-oriented data model. Entity relationship data model graphically represents the logical relationships among the entities. Object-oriented data model considers each object in the world as objects and isolates it from each other. Then we saw physical data model that represents how the model will be built in the database. Record-based data model defines the actual relationship between the data and the entities. Record-based data models are further categorized into hierarchical data models, network data models, and relational data models. Hierarchical data model organizes the data like a tree structure. Network data model provides access to entities through several paths. Relational data model defines how the data is structured in the database physically and how they are interrelated. Thank you for watching this video.